Thanks, Jason, and thanks everybody for inviting me up here to the wild, wintry north to present. Today I'm going to be talking about the first 100 days, right? It's a concept I've developed over the last decade about how to create remarkable customer experiences that will guarantee you customers for life, which at the end of the day is kind of what all of our businesses are seeking, but few of us are actually executing on. And the story actually begins when I was 9 years old. And I was standing outside on a bright, sunny, beautiful summer day in one of America's most impressive, fantastic amusement parks. Regrettably, I was anything but amused at the time. You see, over the course of the previous year, I had grown, and I now met the requirements of this sign, which by itself wouldn't have been a bad thing, except this sign was in front of this sign, the Demon. At the time, it was billed as America's most ferocious, death-defying, terrifying roller coaster. And its mission had been accomplished because I stood there absolutely petrified and not having any interest in getting on this roller coaster. I must confess that it took a significant amount of peer pressure and parental persuasion, but I found myself climbing into the roller coaster car and getting ready for what would be the ride of a lifetime. As I sat down into the car, I pulled that big safety bar down over my neck, and it locked in, and we lurched out of the station, and we began this slow, steady climb to certain death. Now, immediately, thoughts of fear, uncertainty, doubt began to flood my mind. I began to think things like, oh my gosh, whose idea was this? Why am I even on this roller coaster? Is this thing even locked down? I'm kind of a small guy. What if I slide through? What if when we're going through one of the loops, I fall out of the loop and the train hits me coming back through? I die twice. I'm only 9 years old. I've never even kissed a girl. This is horrible. As we climbed higher and higher, the fear mounted more and more, and suddenly we crested the top. As Cameron called earlier, the oh shit moment was in full effect, okay? My stomach, which had been previously located here, rocketed into my throat, and as soon as it was in my throat, it went back down and back up as we did loop after loop after loop. And we went into a corkscrew, and to be honest, we were moving so fast that water started to stream from the sides of my eyes. And was it because of the velocity, or was it because I was crying? I will never admit. And while I don't have a picture of myself on that fateful summer day, I can promise you that it looked something like this. Now let me ask you a question. In a room full of savvy entrepreneurs, business leaders, you know, the people who are really making it happen, how many of you love a death-defying, terrifying roller coaster? Show of hands, how many? I want you to look at the room. At best, 50% of the room is raising their hands. And I would argue, and I think Cameron would agree, that entrepreneurs are kind of the rare bunch in this crowd, because if you ask the average person, it's like 5% of people, 10% of people. You all are risk takers, okay? This makes sense. The average person doesn't like the roller coaster ride. And yet, the problem is that's what you're subjecting your customers to every single day when they do business with you. When a customer first does business with you, a clock starts ticking. And that clock ticks faster and faster. Now, those of us that are like you, Jay, who have studied brain science and how these things work, are familiar maybe with the concept of buyer's remorse. And what happens is when we first make a purchase, endorphins are released in our brain, right? And these endorphins flood us with feelings of positivity, joy, success. We finally found the solution to the problem we've been worrying about for all of these years. But almost as immediately as these endorphins fire and the chemicals flood our brain, they begin to dissipate and go away. And suddenly, what was a moment of love and joy and delight turns into a moment of fear and uncertainty and doubt. We begin to question our judgment. We begin to ask things like, did I take enough time evaluating this decision? Did I really get the best product? Is this really going to solve my problems? You know, we're investing a lot of money in this decision, and what if it doesn't pay off? What if my employees think I'm an idiot? Was it the sales guy? Is that really why I bought this? You know, he was actually really smooth, and I liked him, and it seemed like we were friends, and now he doesn't call anymore. I wonder what happened. The effect on your business is absolutely devastating. I want you to pretend for a moment, if you will, that you are the CEO of one of the largest banks here in Canada. Or for the few Americans in the room, if you want to pretend you're the CEO of a bank in Buffalo, that's fine too. Okay? Pretend you're the CEO. And your job is to attract as many new customers to your business as possible on an annual basis. You have your acquisition targets. You've figured out to the penny how much you can expend to acquire a new customer. The dirty little secret that the banking industry doesn't want you to know is that 32% of new customers to a bank will leave within the first year. Stop and think about that for a second. 32% of the people who have come in the front door will exit the back door in under 1 year. Now, I don't know about you, if many of you have set up a bank account anytime recently, it's a pain in the ass. I mean, you have to go in, you have to sign signature cards, you have to transfer money over, you have to make sure that your old bank, that the check's clear before you completely empty out the account. You have to get new credit cards, new debit cards, you have to set up online bill pay. I mean, it's a nightmare to go through this process. And yet 32% of the people that go through all of that leave. What's more scary is that over 20% of those people leave without conducting a single transaction. These are the banking industry statistics. They're shocking, they're mind-numbing. Over 50% of those people leave within the first 100 days. Now, what's interesting when we think about that is, I know it's not as popular here in Canada, but in the US, they often associate a dollar value. Open a new checking account, get $50. Open a new checking account, get $100. If you ever take the time to read the fine print, do you know when that money gets paid? Anybody have a guess? 12 months, close. It's longer than you think, right? It's not when you first sign up the account. The typical bank, it's on day 100. Because they figured out that if they get you to the 100-day anniversary, the average customer stays with a bank for 5 to 7 years. Wait, Joey, let me get this straight. If we're still there on day 100, statistically we'll be there for 5 years. Yes. It's that simple. So let's pretend, for example, we're not in the banking industry. Let's pretend we're restaurateurs, okay? How many of you, I know Jim asked earlier for a show of hands of how many parents there were in the room. We're about to see the same hands raise again. How many of you have ever been to a Chuck E. Cheese? Show of hands, okay? Look around the room, pretty much everybody, a bunch of people, all right? Now what's fascinating is 46% of people that go to Chuck E. Cheese will never go to Chuck E. Cheese again. They go once and they're done. 46%. Stop and think about if your business had a close rate that meant that 46% of the people who tried your business never came back again. Now, I don't know if that's because of, the screaming kids. I don't know if it's because of those kind of scary, goofy animatronic robots. I don't know if it's because they have a rat as their logo and they serve food. But the fact of the matter is, almost half the people are leaving as quickly as they've entered. What about the cell phone industry? We're all familiar with these draconian cell phone contracts that we sign, right? That you sign in, it's a 2-year commitment, and they tell you, by the way, if you cancel this commitment, you're going to have to mortgage your house, give us your car, and 2 of your 3 kids. Okay? And yet 21% of people break their contract in the first year. Despite all of these efforts that the cell phone companies have put in to keep people in the door, 21% are leaving. What about software as a service? Well, I hate to rain on your parade, but in the typical software as a service business, 20% of the customers are leaving before day 100. Now, what's interesting is you may be sitting here and saying, well, Joey, this is pretty simple. I don't have a bank. I don't have a cell phone company. I don't own a Chuck E. Cheese. And I don't do software as a service. So this doesn't really apply to me. And to be frank, I don't know what the statistic is for your specific business. How many people are leaving in the first 100 days? The problem is, most of you don't either. That's really where it gets scary. It really gets scary that in your business, in your industry, the average person in this room isn't even aware of how many people are leaving. I don't know about you, but that scares me. Looking at all industries across the world, all cultures, the typical defection rate in the first 100 days is between 20 and 60%. Let that sink in a bit. 20 to 60%. And again, this all happens in the first 100 days. It's so ironic that it's such a small period of time and yet such a huge impact on our businesses. What's really sad is, respectfully, most of you are making it worse. Stop and think about this a little bit. I often like to draw parallels to our personal lives because I find that there are regularly things that we wouldn't dream of doing in our personal life that we do in our business life, and when it doesn't work, we're shocked. Imagine in your personal life, you meet someone, you like them, you're like, hey, this could be the one. You spend a little time with them, you get to know them a little bit, maybe go hang out with their friends, maybe if you're real lucky, get to meet the family, start to figure out some of their quirks, maybe there's a sleepover or two, depending on your values. Long story short, you kind of get to the point where you're like, this is the person that I would like to be in a relationship with. This is the person I'm going to go all in with. And so you get up the courage and you say, I propose that we enter into a relationship together. And in most cultures, you even get down on one knee. I mean, you make a big show of it. And the person says yes. And you're ecstatic. You think, yes, this is it. This is the one. Now, imagine if in that scenario, you put the ring on the finger, the person says, yes, I'm all in, and then you said, here's the deal. Come on back over here to my place. And you walk back over to their place, and you open the door, and you say, I'd like you to meet Bob. From now on, he's going to be in charge of this relationship. I need to go find someone else to sleep with. This would never fly in our personal lives. And yet most of you, this is how you treat your customers. This is what you're doing. And we wonder why it's not working. The good news is there's a solution, okay? And the solution lies in the customer life cycle. Now, what's really fascinating about the customer life cycle is right now, all attention, most likely in your business, is focused here on the left side of the graph. Awareness, knowledge, consideration. We have marketing budgets. We do branding. We have customer acquisition plans. We have sales teams. We have people going out, finding the customers, getting it done, bringing them into the fold. Yes, this is how our business succeeds. If you look on Amazon, the great majority of books that have been written in the world of business are written about this time period. How do you acquire? How do you fill the funnel? How do you get them in? When in reality, they should be written about this time period. After the first purchase, after the selection and trial, when we get to the stage of satisfaction and loyalty. That's where the gold lies. That's where the magic is. We spend all this time getting people to the front door, we invite them in, and then we don't make them feel at home. Again, draw an analogy to your personal life. Can you imagine inviting someone over to dinner, having them show up at the door, opening the door and saying, hey, good to see you, come on in. They come in, you close the door, you go sit back down and you start watching the game again. Most of the men are like, that's exactly what I do. The women are horrified right now. They're like, oh my God, you didn't offer to take their jacket, you didn't offer to give them a drink, you didn't ask them how their day was, you didn't give them a tour of the house. What were you thinking? And we wonder, with the great majority of business leaders being males, why we struggle with this. Something to think about. Also ties back to Cameron's comments earlier about getting more women involved in the conversation, because women understand this inherently. They are hardwired to build relationships. They are hardwired to care. Men, we're hardwired to wear blinders. We're hardwired to worry about pretty much ourselves, and then, oh, by the way, if something comes across our field of vision, if we're not going to kill it, we might pay attention to it. All of this happens in the first 100 days. And the secret is to develop an onboarding program, right? An onboarding program is designed to invite in new customers using a managed, structured series of contacts to create a welcoming experience. It's the definition of onboarding. To create a welcoming experience. My gut instinct is most of you are not approaching your customer onboarding as a welcoming experience. You are approaching it as a transactional experience that is going to give you more money so you can turn around and go out and chase more people. And we wonder why they leave. I've identified 6 key ways that you can interact with your customers in the first 100 days, okay? In person, via email, via mail, the old-fashioned snail mail, phone, videos, and presence. Okay, there are different ways you can interact. Some of these overlap in different ways, but the moral of the story is we need to combine all of these things into a ritual. And the reason I use the word ritual is because what it actually means and what it brings up in us. Before you even saw the definition and I said ritual, the great majority of you, especially the Irish Catholics that raised their hand in the room earlier when Jim asked the question, suddenly had a very clear idea of what I was talking about. A religious or solemn ceremony consisting of a series of actions performed according to a prescribed order. Sounds a lot like that onboarding definition. But doesn't this take it to a different level? The results for your business are absolutely fantastic. Now what's interesting is most of you have probably been subjected to branding conversations where someone says, well, we will increase brand awareness with this huge outlay. And those of you sitting in the CEO role are like, and how much is that going to cost me? And what is the value? I mean, there's this very age-old famous quote about advertising that says, yes, advertising works 50% of the time. I just don't know which 50%. The fact of the matter is that across a wide range of industries, just a 5% improvement in your customer retention equals a 25 to 100% increase in profits. Profits, not revenues, profits. Now, some of the math majors in the room, and since it's mostly a room of entrepreneurs, there aren't many of us, including me, might be looking at this and saying, well, Joey, the math doesn't make sense. 5% can't equate to 25 to 100% on the back end. It doesn't work. But if we stop and think about it, it actually does. Because for most of you, you're already running profitable businesses. So most of your cost of operating have already been taken care of. At this point, extra customers are kind of icing on the cake. Yeah, there's certainly some operational costs associated with it, but those operational costs are a lot thinner than getting those first ones in to get to profitability. The impact is huge. And again, ironically, it all happens in the first 100 days. What's even more fascinating about this concept of the first 100 days in onboarding is that if you have an onboarding program, any type of onboarding program, not an onboarding program created by Joey, not an onboarding program created by Bain or McKinsey that you spent $100 million on, a program that you call an onboarding program and you give a shit about, you will cut your attrition in half. I may be one of the only presenters on the speaking circuit who is saying, if you just create something, not my plan, not my way, anything you can dream up, statistically, it's going to improve your retention by half. Something maybe for us to think about. Now, lots of times when I present about the first 100 days, I get a lot of questions. And people say, well, Joey, I'm not very creative. I can't think this up. I have too many things to worry about. How does one even go about doing it? Well, I wanted to give you some brief case studies today about some other companies that are doing great things in the first 100 days. These are not designed for you to copy them per se, but these are to give you an idea of some of the different touch points you can start to instill early on in your customer relationships to really change the way they see you. Now, I know Zappos is a somewhat touchy subject here in Canada because they don't deliver here and they really should. And in the interest of full disclosure, Zappos is a client of mine and it's something that has regularly been in conversation. But regardless of their deliverability rates locally, I think we can all agree that they are held up around the world as one of the best customer service companies that you will come across in any industry. So a few years ago, I had my first experience with Zappos. I was getting ready to go on vacation and I needed some sandals. And being male, I waited till the last possible minute to figure this out and needed to order some. So I went on Zappos and I said, I'm gonna buy these sandals to go to the beach. Now, please refrain from any judgment on my choice and my fashion sense in apparel. These are the true sandals that I purchased, okay? It always drives my wife crazy when I show this. She's like, I came into the relationship with you and these exited our house. But they were in the house. This is pre-marriage, all right? So on day one, I went on the website and I purchased the sandals. And almost instantly, within about a minute and a half, I received an email. And that email looked like this. Whoa, Nellie, have we got a surprise for you? This is the first time I'd ever done business with Zappos. This did not feel like the typical confirmation email. I started to get a little excited. As we zoom in, it said, we have decided to deliver them faster than originally promised. I had gone for the cheap free shipping, right? What they did is they upgraded it to next day shipping. Free. How cool is that? And they say at the end, we hope this has brightened your day a little. Well, damn right it's brightened my day a little. I wasn't expecting it. It's nice. There's a perceived value. It's a little extra that I never would have treated myself to, but they were kind enough to treat me to. How cool is that? What was even more interesting is what happened on day two, when in the mail, I received this package, Zappos, powered by service. I didn't even know what that meant, but it sounded really cool. Okay, I flipped the package over and it said packed with happiness. I mean, I knew they were based in Las Vegas, but I didn't know they could pack this stuff up and ship it out. I was really excited. The packaging alone started to create an experience, and it started to build in my mind a reputation for what it was going to be like to do business with this company. I started talking about my wonderful experience with Zappos with some of my friends, and showing off my cool new sandals. On day 5, one of my friends said to me, well, Joey, you realize the reason this happens is much to the way Christy was talking about earlier, is because of Zappos culture. And they have a culture book that they create. I was like, a culture book? I've never even heard of a culture book. What is it? Every year, Zappos goes to all of their employees and says, we'd like you to write up a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, as much as you want, about your experience of working here at Zappos. It is only corrected for 2 things, grammar and spelling. And then it's put together into this beautifully bound hardcover book that they publish, distribute to all the employees, distribute to all of their vendors and partners, and if you go on their website, you can order it for free and they will send it to you. It's part of Tony Hsieh, the CEO's commitment to spreading the word that culture is key and that culture makes all the difference. So I went on the website and I ordered the book. What was fascinating was on day 6, the next day, okay, mind you, this is 6 days into the customer relationship. Everybody still tracking along? We're at day 6. Most of you in your businesses haven't spoken to the customer between day 1 and day 6. Zappos has had multiple interactions with me. We get to day 6 and they send me a video, and the video says, while you wait for your culture book, here's a video of how we made the book. Now, was this expected? No. Was it necessary? No. But if I'm the kind of guy that likes to order free books, do you think I might be the kind of guy that's interested to see how books are made? I'd never seen how a book was made. And it was a nice little personalized touch to let them know, hey, we got your order, it's in process, we did something special for you, and we're going to show you how the special sauce is made. Day 1095. For those of you that can't do math, that is 3 years later. I got an email. And that email said, today is your 3rd anniversary as a Zappos customer. Well, thank God they remembered, because I had forgotten that it was our anniversary, okay? To be candid, I have one anniversary that I try to remember, and it sure as heck ain't the Zappos anniversary, all right? And so it comes here, and it's got this fun little hippopotamus singing and dancing, and it says, we want you to have this free invite to join the exclusive Zappos VIP program. I didn't even know what the Zappos VIP program was, but I was thrilled to be invited to join. What the program was is I would be upgraded to next day shipping for every order I ever placed with them again. Now let's take a little bit of an examination at my buying habits. Day 1, I bought the sandals. Day 3, I get this email. How many pairs of shoes had I bought between day 1 and the 3-year anniversary? Anybody have a guess? 1 is generous. It was actually 0. None. How many shoes do you think I bought after I got this email? All of them. Yes, I definitely became a shoe guy. I started buying shoes like crazy because of something as simple as free shipping. Audible. Fantastic company, does, books that you can listen to on tape, right? I am not. Jason is a big books, listening to audiobooks guy. I am not, okay? I don't do audiobooks. I'm a visual learner, not an auditory learner, so it's just not my thing. But a while ago, about 9 months ago now, my wife and I had our first child, okay? And when we had our child, those of you that raised your hands earlier that you have children are probably familiar with the fact that with my son Lachlan being 9 months old, there is something, how shall I say, that I've been lacking for the last 9 months. Anybody have a guess what that was? Sleep, exactly. He still has not slept through the night once. Love him dearly. He's a happy-go-lucky kid, as you can tell. So, luckily that grin makes that acceptable. But I was having no sleep. And I was talking to a friend who also had children, and he said, Joey, there is a book you need to get. Okay? He said, this book is fantastic. You're going to love the book. He said, but here's the problem. Don't buy the book. You want to buy the audio book. Because the audio book is read by Samuel L. Jackson. And let me tell you, can this guy read a children's story? So I decided to buy the audiobook. And I listened to it, and to be frank, it was absolutely hysterical. Absolutely hysterical. I grew up in an Irish Catholic family. My mom has never sworn in her entire life. I finished the end of the book. I called my mom, and I said, Mom, put it on speakerphone. I want to play something for you, right? It was that funny that I was willing to curse in front of my mother by playing this, okay? Absolutely hysterical. What was absolutely impressive was what Audible did after the fact. On day 3, after my purchase on day 1, I received an email. And this is what the email looked like. If you liked Go the Fuck to Sleep, you're going to love these for grown-up children and these for growing children. Audible has a technology that allows them to know when I listened to the audiobook. They timed this knowing that I had already sampled the product. Now, just as a brief aside, I mentioned earlier being a visual learner. Here's what they sent me. Here's what a lot of you are sending. Exact same message. Moral of the story, this converts. This doesn't. Start doing more of this. Final example is Temperature Alert. They're a client of mine based in Boston. And what Temperature Alert does is they make a device that monitors the temperature in an environment and lets you know whether the room gets too hot or too cold. And if it goes outside of the preset bands, they send you an email, send you a text message, and call you on your cell phone. To the average person, this seems to have little to no use. To anyone that's ever been responsible for a server farm, this is hugely important. To anyone that owns, say, a restaurant meat locker, this is hugely important. To anyone that has a vacation home in the North Woods where the pipes might freeze, this is hugely important. What they do is they sell this device for $3.99. And one of the big ploys, if you will, or the big differentiators compared to their competition, is that it is easy to use. Most of these devices require you to have graduated with a degree in engineering to be able to install. This device installs in under 1 minute, or at least that's what the marketing materials tell you. And what's fascinating is the device costs $3.99. For those of you that work in technology and hardware, you know that as a general rule, you don't make much money on the device. All the money is made in the $20 a month monthly monitoring fee. But here's what happens. People buy stuff and they don't use it. Now, some of you are sitting there saying, well, Joey, I use everything I buy. You lie about other things too. What they found is that a good 20 to 30% of their customers were never opening the box and turning it on. They're not getting to the $20 a month recurring revenue. We needed to solve this problem. So what we did is, because when you turn the device on, it reaches out via Wi-Fi, connects to the internet, and pings your account and starts monitoring the temperature on a minute-by-minute basis. We, at the company, know whether or not you've gotten it out of the box. And if by day 7 you have not opened the box and installed your Temperature Alert device, you get a video. And that video shows the CEO unboxing the device, plugging it all in, and setting it up. And there's this really cool clock right down here at the bottom with a ticker that's running, and he gets it done at like 57 seconds, under a minute. And we were like, wow, this is awesome. What was really awesome is what happened. 60% of the people who received this email activated their device within 3 days. At $20 per month going forward, recurring revenue for creating a single video. Now, before the doubt starts to creep in, right, we realized our mistake after the first video. And our next video has the UPS driver installing it, right? Because everybody said, well, the CEO, of course, he should be able to install it in under a minute. It's his device. So now we film on a regular basis different people who randomly come to the office to deliver packages. They're the ones that get to install the device. And they do it in under a minute, and everybody's happy. What we need to explore is your first 100 days solution, okay? And to do that, we need to think a little bit about the first 100 days concept and how we're going to do it. And we're going to have those handouts coming out soon. Christine, if we could, that'd be awesome. So let me walk you through a little bit about how the first 100 days work while we're passing out some of the handouts. So day 0, 1, and then we see all these little number signs, okay? Let me say from the outset, the reason I have number signs on these calendars is the day when this occurs in the life cycle of your customer is different for every business in the room. Day 0 is always the same. Day 1 is always the same. After that, it's kind of an amorphous question until we dive in and explore it. So let's do that a little bit. Day 0, assessment. This is a little bit of an anomaly because what happens is your customers are assessing whether to do business with you or not for a period of time before they actually pull the trigger and give you money. Some of you that work in, say, a convenience store selling bubble gum that's right next to the counter as an impulse buy, their total assessment stage might be 3 seconds. Some of you that are selling multi-million-dollar software installations, their assessment period might be 5 years. It's different for every business, but these are all the days leading up, and I kind of think of them as day 0 because the clock hasn't started ticking. Day 1 is activation. This is the same in every business, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what industry you work in. Activation occurs when the customer hands you money. That's how you know it happened. They gave you money, they are activated. Think of activation as when everything starts. It's the first day of the relationship. Everybody's feeling excited, everybody's feeling hopeful, but as soon as they hand the money over to you, what happens? Buyer's remorse. It starts to kick in. And we immediately move into what I call the affirmation stage. This is your opportunity to counter the buyer's remorse with your behavior, to affirm the purchasing decision that your customer has made. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of ways to do this. What's fascinating is most businesses aren't doing anything at this period. Because, hey, we got the money. They signed on the dotted line. We're working together. They're all in. Or are they? That's not how we behave when we make purchases. And the bigger the purchase, the longer the affirmation stage. The more doubt, the more fear, the more uncertainty. Yet in our typical business structure, we're not doing anything to address that. As they move through the affirmation stage, they next come to the admission stage. Think of this as kind of like admission to college or university, right? It's a big celebration. You're in. Some of you might call this a kickoff meeting. Some of you might call this the first deliverable. This is when they first start to experience what it's going to be like to be in relationship with you and do business with you. Again, as we see by the number sign on the calendar, depending on your business, that could be day 2. That could be day 90. Stop and think about the fact that you may blow through the first 100 days and not even be to the admission stage, depending on your business. And we wonder why, when we start things going, they have a rocky start. We then move to acclimation. I live in Colorado. My house is at 8,000 feet. Okay? So when people come to visit me regularly, about 15% of the people that come to our house to visit get altitude sickness because they have not acclimated to their environment. This same thing happens to your customers. They then move into an acclimation stage where they're doing business with you, but they haven't quite figured out what it's like. They're looking for you to hand them a glass of water, to hand them an oxygen bottle, to make them feel comfortable in this new environment. But what are we doing? We're moving through our systemized processes that are designed to benefit all the efficiencies and allow us to squeeze out the maximum profitability of every customer we interact with. Instead of saying, hey, do you need a lending hand, a helping hand? Can we help you acclimate to your surroundings? We then move into assimilation, right? Assimilation is where we start to feel like we're one of the tribe. We become assimilated, all right? This occurs, for example, when everybody started wearing white headphones with their iPod, right? It's like we are assimilating, we are part of the tribe. And we can start to see it happening. We then move into the stage of adoption. What's interesting in adoption is this is the stage where they say, yes, I am all in. You are my provider, you are my vendor, you are my, I am the client, you are the service provider. Stop and think about it in the context of like adopting a child, right? When we get to the adoption of a child, we say, hey, this person right here, I'm responsible for them. I'm going to look out for them. I'm going to be contributing as much to this relationship as I can. That's what we want our customers to get to. We want them to get to the stage where they're thinking that they've adopted us, where they start promoting us, where they start advocating for us, which is our next stage and the final stage. What's fascinating is most of you are trying to get to advocacy in the first week. It's kind of like going on a first date and saying, so, when do I meet your mom and dad? Not a good opening line. And yet, how many of us, when we do business, turn around and say something like, since you're surely excited with our product and have made the decision to purchase it, if you click right here and give us 3 emails, we will pester the shit out of your friends to buy our product too. We go for the referrals way too early. Way too early. In the typical business, you shouldn't even be thinking about referrals until somewhere around day 100. Why? Because they're not bought in yet. They're not sold. And yet we're so quick because we've read those books that are, again, on the left side of the graph that are about acquisition. What's the best and cheapest way to do acquisition? Get your customers to acquire people for you. And we wonder why our referral programs that we've spent almost 2 entire offsites talking about don't work. This is the process that every human being goes through when making a purchasing decision. Yet the typical business is only focused on the assessment, i.e. our marketing and branding, and the activation, how do we close the sale? And then we fast forward and jump to the advocacy. Instead of saying from day 1, what is this relationship like? And how are we going to build it long term? And not lip service, hey, we seek long-term relationships with our clients. I mean real, bought in, the same kind of focus and dedication and care that you brought to the relationship that led you to be able to put one of these on your finger. As opposed to, allow me to add another number to our customer list. So you have a worksheet in front of you, okay? It's got 2 sides. This is the first test. Canadians are smarter than Americans. We're going to have no problem with this, okay? You want the side that says your current customer contact in the first 100 days, okay? One says future, one says current. You want to be looking at the one that says current. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes. And what I want you to do is write down all the different ways you are currently interacting with your customers in the first 100 days. Now, before you start writing, some of you, the juices are already flowing. I can see it looking out around the room. You're like, oh, we could do that. Oh, we could send them a video. That's great. We're going to get to that on the other side. But for now, we just need to baseline and measure what the status quo is. So I want you to fill in ink in whichever boxes about what you currently do. So we send them a confirmation email. Great. We'd write confirmation email up in the top right box. We give them a call and thank them for doing business with us. We write that in the phone box. Everybody understand the instructions? Take about 1.5 minutes. Go ahead and see how much ink you can get on the page with your current activities. Correct. Great clarifying question. You'll be tempted to write stuff you're doing in sales and marketing in these boxes because you are type A personalities that want to have ink on the page. That's not what we're talking about. This is what happens after they hand you the money, after day 1, after activation. What happens? Alrighty, before anybody feels bad or guilty, I've done this presentation all over the world to businesses in all industries. The average person at this point in the exercise has ink in 2, maybe 3 boxes. So if you only have ink in 2 or 3 boxes, congratulations, you're average. By the end of the presentation, you're going to be above average though, okay? You'll be back to your usual mode of operating, so it'll work out. So how do we actually do this? How do we go about building your plan? As much as I would have loved to spend the day with you, I only have an hour, so I want to give you kind of some rapid fire ideas about how you can take this concept of the first 100 days and start to apply it in your business starting on Monday. It's a 3-step process, and process step number 1 is investigate. We have to investigate who our customers are. So to begin this process, I'd like you to presume, just for sake of our little hypothetical, that the 106 people that are currently in the room are all customers of mine. And my job is to create great impressions with you. So because you're my customers, I know your names. Well, at least I know your last names, right? And by looking at your last names, which are kind of like the ante-up chips to be able to sit down at the game, by looking at your last names, I might notice some interesting things. Now, I want to be careful because my presumption could be that these people are married. When the reality is, as we notice by looking at the heralds, it's just that they grew up in the same house once upon a time. Well, what about the first names, okay? And we say, well, Joey, I also know the first name, and so that's more personalized. That's an even stronger connection, right? Most people don't realize, they've done studies, the most pleasing sound to the human ear is the sound of your own name. So let's look at how unique these names are. What I find fascinating is we have 3 Peters, 3 Pauls, and not a damn Mary. But, you know, what can you do? Now, some of you may be looking at this and saying, Joey, well, again, I have my nice form field set up. So it's like, dear first name, last name, or dear first name, comma, and we mail merge, and it's awesome. It gives a sense of personalization. Until it doesn't, until you mess up, and pretty much every company's done that at least once. Number 2, you say that you really care about them and you call them by name, but I'd be willing to bet you've assigned them a customer number, and that's how you refer to them internally. Something to think about. We need to investigate more personally. We need to explore who our customers really are. A picture tells 1,000 words. And yet most of us aren't even willing to look our customers in the face. If we did, we'd recognize some interesting things. Like, for example, up here near the top left, you know, the second one in, we see that Anthony has fantastic hair. We see that Bashir has a beautiful smile. All right? We scroll along and we see down here about halfway that Curtis, he kind of looks a little intimidating and tough. All right? Eric down here doesn't really look intimidating or tough at all. We explore our customers and we recognize that somebody like John, who's a big Cutco knives guy, actually has a profile picture with a knife in it. In any other environment, that would be creepy as hell. But in John's business, he's on brand message. This is a good thing. We learn that Paul is into plants. He's the only guy with anything living in his picture other than himself. And we learn that Robert loves the ocean and loves the water. How would our relationship with our customers be different if we just took the 30 seconds to Google them, or check out their LinkedIn profile, or check out their Facebook profile? What if we just started to make some assumptions based on the photograph that they are holding out to the world and saying, this is most representative of who I am, of what I stand for, of what I believe in? They're giving us clues, people. If we dove a little deeper, we might be able to find out where they work. And what's interesting here is in a room of entrepreneurs, right? As a general rule, most of the where you work is where your life's passion is. For most of your customers, that's not the way it operates. It's a job job. So we don't really get a lot of insight into what they really love by finding out where they work. Yet we have a tendency to put a lot of stock in that. If we wanted to figure out what they love, we might want to explore a little bit further. And what we might figure out is that some of them love people that are similarly aged. We might find that some of them love people that are much, much younger. We might find that some of them love and have loved people for many, many years and will love them for many years to come. We might find that others are getting ready to love someone in a way they've never loved before. We might find that some have children that love to dress up. We might find that some love to dress up themselves. And what we will certainly find is that despite many differences, we all have a very similar love. Once we've investigated and spent a little time actually exploring who our customers are, we can then start to personalize. We can take some of the things John talked about and get creative with how we interact with people. For example, we could figure out that Nick has decided to have a truck as his profile picture on LinkedIn. And we could learn that Ray has a truck for his logo. Without exploring and investigating, how many miles down the road would we have been before we could make this connection? We might find that Chris, Dave, Jody, and Samantha are all in the promotional products business. And we might learn that Craig used to run one of the most successful promotional product businesses in the world. Now, I feel compelled to say, some of you are thinking, I should have included John on this slide. But respectfully, John ain't in the promotional product business. John's in the experience business. And that's not meant as a criticism of any of these people. But we could learn these things by exploring and investigating and actually personalizing our communications. Do you think with this level of knowledge, we could actually promote and persuade these people to become some of our big fans? We might learn that Ian and Thomas both love cartoon characters. I mean, what is it about guys with glasses and goatees that are into the cartoon character profile? I don't know, but there's something there. With this type of information, would we be better able to illustrate the connections to our clients? We might learn that Tom, Govin, and Christy are really into taxidermy. If we knew the stuff that our customers are made of, would that change our experience of them? We might also learn that Kira used to own a yoga studio, and Christine owns one now. Could positioning and posing those two into a relationship create some wonderful opportunities for both of them, independent of our relationship? Finally, we might learn that Herbert makes clothes for women that like to play hockey. Ironically enough, so do Jen and Robert. Is this maybe the way to identify these savvy sartorialists and connect them in a way that we recognize that they're actually cut from the same cloth? The time you are willing to spend exploring who your customers are, what they love, what they believe in, will pay back dividends that you can't even begin to imagine. Now, one question I get asked about a lot when I present is, okay, Joey, there's 106 people in the room. You clearly, on some of us, dove deep. You dove into all of our lives. How long does this take? True confession time. We had a dinner last night with some of the speakers. We got back from dinner at about 9:30, 10 o'clock. That's when I started working on your names, because I didn't have your names much before that. I went to bed at 4. I don't say that to be like, oh, that's great. I have a 9-month-old. Seriously, 4 was early to go to bed, okay? Not a problem. But if I'm willing to put that kind of effort, what really equates to, 6 hours of work to learn about 106 of you, do you think there's someone in your company that could maybe spend a day on this next week? At least for your top 100 customers? Once we've stepped into the investigation and we've moved through to feel the place where we're able to personalize, it's now time to surprise. And what's great about surprise is it's kind of like these old books. Did anybody read these books when they were a kid? Show of hands. Choose Your Own Adventure. I love these books. They were fantastic. And here's how the Choose Your Own Adventure series worked. You'd open the book and it would say, you're walking down the road. It's a beautiful sunny day. Trees are lining both sides of the neighborhood. And up in front of you at the end of the road, you see a UFO land. The door opens and an alien steps out and reaches out his hand. At the same time, a red Ferrari comes racing around the corner. The door flies open and a beautiful woman says, quick, come with me. Do you get in the UFO or do you get in the Ferrari? If you get in the UFO, turn to page 58. If you get in the Ferrari, turn to page 94. And then you go on and you read the story. This is the opportunity that is available to you in every interaction you have with your customers. You can have fun. This doesn't have to be drudgery. This doesn't have to be annoying. This can actually be entertaining. I know many of you have children. You're probably familiar with the infamous song by La Lumiere, be our guest, put our service to the test. How would our businesses be different if we had that song running in our mind the minute we welcome someone into the fold? Do you remember this scene in the movie? It was fanfare. It was celebration. It was delight. It was a show. It was theater. I don't think of them as customers or clients. I think of them as audience members. That semantic change alone will have a huge impact on your business. If you start thinking about how do we perform for our audience instead of how do we get more customers or clients. We talked about these 6 different ways that you can interact: in-person, email, mail, phone, video, and presence. And we've already heard some great examples for presents today, right? We heard Christy talk about the ice cream sundaes that she delivered to the painters. We heard Craig talk about the swag bombs that he does on a regular basis. We heard John's wonderful presentation talking about high-end gifts that are unexpected and surprise. And what's fascinating is these all tied in to Jim's presentation, which was about, at the end of the day, damn it, it's the relationship that matters. Why did you get into business? I'd be willing to bet that none of you got into business to have a better quarter this quarter than you did last quarter. And yet, damn it, that's a big piece of your focus. I bet you got into business because you actually cared. You wanted to help people. You wanted to do it better than everybody else was doing it. You wanted to be in charge of creating your own experience, creating your own products, creating your own services, connecting with people in a way that they had never been connected with until you showed up and started your business. And here we are a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, and a bit of the gleam has worn off. This will help you reconnect in a way that I'd be willing to bet you haven't connected to your business in a really long time. It will also help your employees connect to your business in a way that most of them have never connected. And I say that respectfully, right? There are people that are cut from the entrepreneurial cloth. There are people that are cut from the employee cloth. We have to make sure we understand both experiences. What are 3 quick things we could do? Well, number 1, we could help Bob. Okay? You probably have a sales team. You probably have an account management team. Invite the account management people to the sales calls. Now, some of you are thinking, Joey, that would be ridiculously cost prohibitive. Well, you know what? Do it once a month. See what happens. My gut instinct is it's going to revolutionize your business in a way that you'll figure out how to get these guys out in the field more. Or at the very least, create some type of an introduction to them before the deal is done. A video saying, hey, by the way, this is our account rep. In fact, somebody in the room did that recently and sent me a copy of the video, and they said, you know, here's what we do as soon as we get the customer or they're kind of going through the sales process, we send them a video of who their account rep is going to be. It's like a 2-minute video we shoot in the office. It's a little quirky, it's a little corny, but they get to see the person who's going to be on the other end of the phone when we're helping them with their debt collection. Second thing you can do, don't make the invoice be the first thing you send them. Oops. Oh, I see a lot of people going, okay. Note to self, don't write it down right now. He's looking at me, but that is definitely something we could improve on. Raise your hand if you love getting bills, love getting invoices. Yeah, I thought so. No one. And yet for most of us, we say, hey, honey, we're in a relationship together. Let's get engaged. Oh, by the way, let's make sure you pay that bill. We'd like the deposit first and last right here at the beginning. Now, I understand that there are reasons for your business why you might want to do some of those things. And I'm not saying do away with them. I'm saying just don't let it be the first communication. Let there be some fun stuff before that. Finally, gifts and presents. And I think most of the people that work in kind of gifting would agree with me that in the first 100 days, you want to have at least 3 unexpected presents or surprises. Now, some of you are sitting there and saying, Joey, oh my gosh, we don't have the budget to do this. There's no way we can do that. But did you actually listen to some of the examples Craig was giving? Right? You can send gifts that cost money. You can also send gifts that just cost a little bit of attention. For example, reading a magazine and seeing an article that you think one of your customers would enjoy, tearing it out of the magazine, circling it, writing a 3-4-word thing at the top, thought of you, Bob, sign your name, and put it in the mail. My gut instinct is if you got that from someone, you'd go, wow, someone thought of me when they read this article. I better read this article. You're reading the damn article anyway. Take Cameron's advice. Leverage what you're doing. Make everything you do have an impact on your customers. Tony Hsieh, the CEO of Zappos, goes to all of these events where he gets swag bags, right? And they give him free iPads and iPods and all kinds of cool gifts and gadgets and prizes. Tony has sold multiple companies, and pretty much every company he's sold over the last 15 years, 20 years he's been in business has been a $100 million plus exit for him. Dude doesn't need another iPad. Let's just call it. What he does is he gathers all of this stuff, and once a quarter, they have a shopping day for their top performing employees where they walk into a conference room, and there's all these prizes laid out, and they're able to go in and pick something. Some of you as CEOs are already getting exposed to wonderful opportunities. Given your life, given your lifestyle, you're experiencing things that, to be frank, for you have become normal, but for your employees would blow their minds. So there's a piece of this about surprising your customers. As a quick aside, surprise your employees too. Raise your hand if you've ever flown first class in your life. Yeah, look around the room. Pretty much everybody in the room has at some point flown first class. If you were to go to your office on Monday and ask your employees that, would the same number of hands go up? I bet not. How about you take some of those miles and next time someone's going on vacation, say, oh, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to California. Great, let me upgrade you to first class. What? They don't know that you have 4 million miles that you will never use. They will have an experience they've never had before. Or do that for one of your customers. One of your customers, you're on the phone with them. You learn that they're getting ready to go on vacation. Say, hey, can I do something special for you? If you book your flight on this airline, I'll be able to upgrade you to first class. So just go ahead, buy whatever ticket you would. Call me with the ticket number. I'll get it all squared away. Gifting first class upgrades, huge. People go bonkers. The secret is to approach it like a relationship. To approach it from the point of view that every day you are called upon to do something special, to deepen the relationship, to take it to the next level. This is how you get to a lifelong relationship. One day at a time. Unexpected surprises. Flowers when there was no reason to give flowers. Love songs. Little notes left behind to be unexpectedly found. You used to do this in your personal relationship. Most of you don't anymore. Something to think about, kind of maybe a nice little aside from the presentation today that you can put into effect this weekend in your home life. Imagine if we started doing that for our customers. Imagine how they would feel about us when their spouse doesn't even treat them this lovingly or this caringly. Something to think about. You have your sheet. I'd like you to turn it over. And we're going to take 1 minute because now you have all kinds of ideas flowing. I want you to try to write in boxes that you didn't previously write in. I want you to write down ideas. This is the no judgment phase. Things that you could start to do starting next week to enhance the experience your customers are having in the first 100 days. The goal is to get ink on the page. Don't worry if it's a good idea, a bad idea, an implementable idea. Doesn't matter. Get ink on the page. Fill in the boxes. What are some fun things you could do? There are lots of speakers and presenters that you have the opportunity to hear at EO. And one of my personal goals, anytime I have the pleasure of addressing an audience anywhere in the world, is to hopefully give them things that they can put into action. I'm not the theory guy, right? I'm not the academician who wants to tell you, well, theoretically, this would be a fun exercise. I'm the action guy. I'm the guy who wants you to go back to the office on Monday and, as Cameron said, slow it down just a little, right? Don't give them all the things you want to start implementing in the first 100 days, but sit your team down and get them involved in the conversation. Say, guys, we want to start to make a difference. We want to change this up. We want to make it exciting for you. What can we do to change the conversation? I promise you that step alone will dramatically impact your business. It will dramatically impact it internally in terms of your morale and your culture, and it will dramatically impact it externally in terms of the word of mouth and the buzz that is spreading about what it's like to do business with your amazing company, because unlike most of their other life experiences, you seem to actually care, and you prove it again and again. You've been an awesome audience, and I want to give a quick recap, the entire hour presentation in under 1 minute. So when you make a purchase, the clock starts ticking, things activate, and almost as soon as you actually buy, buyer's remorse starts to creep in, the fear, the doubt, the uncertainty. It leads to people leaving your business at radical rates that we might not know for your specific business, but statistically is somewhere between 20 and 60%. As if that wasn't bad enough, you're actually doing things with the very structure of your business to make the situation worse. And part of that is because you've spent all your time focused on the left side of the customer life cycle instead of focusing on the right side, where once they're in the door, how can we make their experience remarkable? You've got 6 tools that statistically, before today, you were only using 2 or 3. Now that you've filled out your future worksheet, you're able to do all 6. And we also gave you some examples of companies from big to small that are doing it right in the first 100 days. By filling out this action items on the back of your sheets for what you're going to do in the future, you now have a roadmap so that you can invite people in, welcome them to be your guest. Use the tools we've learned about of investigating, personalizing, and surprising in a way to create remarkable experiences for them, so that by day 100, you've got a customer that is absolutely blown away and isn't going anywhere. All of this starts on day 1, because at the end of the day, to be completely frank, your customers are going to experience a roller coaster with you, whether you have an onboarding program or not. That is the nature of business. It is the nature of the human condition. And there are going to be times when your customers look like this. My hope is that after our presentation today, you recognize the importance of playing this role in their lives and helping them to have a remarkable experience. If you get the customer experience right in the first 100 days, you will have a customer for life. Thanks so much for your time.